That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about the Homestuck animated pilot. It dropped on the holiest of Homestuck meme dates. You know, September 27th. I mean, 1025 is right there. Before we actually get into the episode itself, we have some things to cover first. So, the director of the pilot, Sky Henwood, did a Q&A regarding the project. Now, there were some stupid questions like, will this show be a musical? Yeah, of course not. But we did learn a few things, such as Vivzy Pop having nothing to do with the pilot other than being a producer. She even jokes in the Q&A, stating that her involvement is zero, so you're allowed to like it. Alright, I'm gonna be real with everyone. Vivzy Pop was always a red herring in terms of the questionability of this pilot. It was always Andrew Hussie that was the real issue. So what has he been up to? Well, he seems to be in more of a creative consultant position with regards to the production. He oversees it all and he gives his approval. It appears most of it is being run by the Spindleroot crew. Which is actually fine. They're the ones who would better know how TV production is handled. I mean, Hussie couldn't even manage creating a point-and-click adventure game very well. It's probably a good thing he's just the ideas guy. So you know I love poking fun at Hussie. However, recently he made something I really like. They made the official Homestuck Discord. Which, yes, that may sound like the worst combination of words in the English language, but Hussie took the opportunity to join and reconnect with fans a bit. He made another MS Paint adventure as a small event. It's a sequel to Bard Quest, which if you don't remember, don't worry. It's just the least popular and most obscure of the MSPAs. That's really the joke with making a sequel. So this entry is called Jester Quest. The Jester, of course, is Bard Quest's #1 fan, and has been waiting diligently for an update for almost 20 years. Anyway, he just gets up to some goofy, old-school MS Paint adventure chicanery. It's been so long since we've gotten something like this from Hussie. It really took me back. Admittedly, I'm not much of a fan of including Discord screen caps of the commands in the comic, but that's just a minor complaint. Is this the start of the potential Andrew Hussie redemption arc? Yeah, of course not. But credit where it's due, Jester Quest was pretty fun. Anyway, let's get to the pilot itself. This thing covers about half of Act 1 in only 11 minutes. A lot of people find that pretty concerning, because that's extremely short, especially for a story as long as Homestuck. Well, a pilot's job is to show the gist of the story for pitching purposes. Sometimes it's the first episode of the actual series, but Vivzy Pop shows don't seem to do that. They're always decanonized, so we can only assume that this pilot won't actually be the first episode when it's all said and done. It's just here to give us an idea. Does it do a good job of that? Well, we'll get to it. Sky mentions in the Q&A that we don't actually know how long the show would theoretically be. It could be a miniseries for all we know, or it could be 20 seasons long. That's assuming the show is picked up at all. The pilot could just be a dud. Hussie made a post saying that buying the newly launched merch can help get this thing picked up. What, no more Kickstarters? Okay, well the onus shouldn't be on us to buy shit in order to sell the series. You're the guys who wanted to do this! I mean, it's not bad merch, but still. Okay, let's be honest, this show will never actually reach the end of the story. They couldn't even successfully make a book release that covered the whole comic, and all the content for that is already made. Anyway, at the very least, one of the goals of the show is to make Homestuck more digestible. This is to be expected, as this story needs to be cut down and simplified if it has any chance of being adapted. I don't actually mind the idea of that. I mean, how many great movies have been adapted from books and have been simplified? To recap Hussie's thoughts, he always said that he would heavily slash HS, to the point of vandalization, in adapting it. He also said that absolute purity and fidelity from an adaptation is the hallmark of the zealously devoted. That's fine, but isn't really a point of view I cotton to. It's very rigid, very linear, and those demands are ironically antithetical to the spirit behind HS's creation. So he's on board with changing things. I've seen a lot of creators hold that view actually. They don't mind adaptations making changes to their story. Often it's just the fans who treat the original source material as sacrosanct. With that being said, I have seen people who aren't exactly pleased that Homestuck is being simplified. So let's talk about that. Homestuck is a long, meandering mess, but it's an amazing mess for people who like it. Yes, many people haven't made it through the great filter that is Act 1, but I can say for me personally, and for a lot of others, Homestuck scratches an itch like nothing else. The presentation of the story, utilizing every way that a web page can present media, is part of its appeal. And then there's the convoluted writing. Yes, it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's hard to actually figure out what's going on. Once again, Hussie has referred to it as a story that is also a puzzle. But once you put the pieces together, oh wow, there's nothing like the high the comic gives you. There's also all those movie references, which apparently they're running into some rights issues with them for the pilot. So the posters don't have much definition in the background. They're going to try, but they can't get away with nearly as much. They're gonna have to make all that Con Air shit work though, that's pretty much a requirement. So yeah, we're just scrubbing away all of that. Without some of the major appeals of Homestuck, does this adaptation have merit? Will lightning strike twice? Will it cause a Homestuck fandom renaissance? Well, I think there is some validity in making a simpler version of the story. It's not like the original webcomic is going anywhere. At least when you can actually read it. In terms of fandom growth, I feel like the show could have its own exclusive fans. Even though I love convoluted nonsense, most people don't. So the potential for popularity here really is greater than the comic. Will that happen though? I don't think so. I think 2010's era Homestuck can't be matched. The most likely scenario I see is that the show may funnel people into reading the original story more than anything. Okay, let's talk about what you really care about. Michael Bowman's lack of involvement in the pilot. Bowman is still rather agitated that they continue to leave him out of projects. Although Sky says in the Q&A that using the original soundtrack is important. So maybe they'll get Bowman on board for the actual show, if it gets picked up. After all, they end the pilot right before Suburban Jungle would play. So I guess it does make sense why they wouldn't get him yet. But they better next time. Having Suburban Jungle is not negotiable. So let's talk about the content of the pilot. I actually enjoyed it with just a few caveats, which we'll get into. The show starts off with Wayward Vagabond, which I don't really like the placement of that here. It's part of a larger issue that we'll dive into in a second. John does indeed stand in his bedroom, with the narration talking about being born 13 years ago and all that. I don't know why the hell Oni is the narrator, since that's literally supposed to be Hussie.
A classic teenage boy that enjoys classic teenage boy things like playing video games, programming computers. Poorly.
That's just insane casting, but okay. If anything, it should have been Kerbifer doing his Alex Zeke voice. It sounds surprisingly like Hussie.
Who is Andrew Hussie? How do I answer this question? A guy who made a very long story.
I sighed as the elevator began to shake, vibrating with motion.
The pilot is essentially Act 1 on speed, where we just rush through everything. So let's begin with the problems. While I know the context of everything, I've seen a lot of people who haven't read the comic having no idea why anything was happening. Okay, but Homestuck is supposed to be confusing. Well, people are confused about things that aren't supposed to be a mystery. In fact, it's stuff that the comic explains in absurd depth. The fundamental basics of the world are not the confusing parts of Homestuck. Act 1 is dominated by Silodex shenanigans, which shows up a little here. The narrator glosses over the inventory system briefly. However, it doesn't really help explain what a stack modus is or why John has an inventory in the first place. This sort of thing was easier to accept when the format was a mock text adventure. The confusion mounts when John does his weird anime strife in the sky with his dad. I don't really know what that's about. Act 1 was always accused of being boring, so I guess this epic sky fight is supposed to be a more energetic way to start the story. I think it's going a little too hard too quickly though, and inappropriate event escalation is a major problem with the pilot. Anyway, since the Silodex and inventory management isn't the focus, it makes no real sense to a new viewer why and how John is dropping smoke pellets in Colonel Sassacre's daunting text. It's also never even explained what those items are. That's especially a problem for the daunting text. So you're just supposed to know what those little beans are, and what that book is, and why John is dropping them from his inventory. It's easy to miss that he even picks them both up in the first place. Dad's supposed love of Harlequins isn't really brought up either. So the giant Harlequin doll is just another bizarre addition to the story. Considering how important that plot point is, it really needs to be addressed. I don't know why John's arm is already in the sky at the beginning either. I mean, if the point is to keep the retcon arc, it can't already be there since that is, by definition, not a retcon. There's also the sizzle reel at the end, hinting at future things. This also isn't meaningful for anyone who hasn't read the comic already. Sure, it's nice for existing fans, but this has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of the pilot. And I'm not sure why anyone new is going to care. Like, who's this guy? What does this mean? There's also the steady sense of buildup that the comic had. It goes places you don't expect, and it just keeps upping the ante constantly. So spoiling everything up front isn't something that I particularly like. There are times and places for these reveals, and the first episode isn't one of them. That's why I have an issue with the beginning with Wayward Vagabond. It means nothing to the viewer at this point. It's confusing, and I believe its initial reveal in the comic, after the meteor strikes John's neighborhood, really evokes a sense of mystery and intrigue after the end of Act 1 raised the stakes. WV seems to be controlling the Homestuck mouse cursor, which is something that only briefly shows up in the original story. Well, it was the MSPA reader using the mouse, but that's besides the point. However, there really is no context for who this mysterious man is, or how he's seemingly controlling John. They're really jumping the gun with some things. There is an art to Homestuck's increasing level of convolutedness. You can't rush it. The bottom line is there's just a ton of stuff in this pilot that serves actually zero purpose in terms of making the episode work. Like, why the hell do we see the meteor before Spurb is installed? That's not the right place for that oh shit moment, and it has no real payoff in the pilot itself. Likewise, I love the scene in the comic where Rose is evading her mom in the hallway. It too is in the pilot, which is nice to see, but it's also misplaced, because Rose has no reason at all to be sneaking around her house yet. In the comic, she had to go to the observatory to use the lab's Wi-Fi signal. Because the power was out. Also, John's life was in danger. Here, she's literally talking to John while in the hallway, and he's still doing random pre-Spurb bullshit. Rose's laptop glitched slightly, so it seems like that's why she's running around the house. Which, I don't know how that's supposed to help her minor technical issues, but okay. The point is, this is a cool visual from the comic, so we gotta just throw it in there despite lacking any reason. Here's another problem that I think we can all agree on. Dave is just bizarrely energetic. That's not how I imagined him at all. If he's supposed to be cool, he needs to be way more calm. Also, where's his iPhone? Like John, he's got a flip phone. What, did they forget that smartphones were a thing back then? I mean, one thing that I always liked was the varying levels of tech that the kids had. John with his PDA, Dave with his iPhone, Rose with her laptop, and Jade with whatever the fuck this is. It gave a nice bit of variety. But maybe the actual children that this pilot is aimed at think that iPhones are only a recent invention. The show still takes place in 2009, which is nice and faithful or whatever. I really wouldn't have a problem if they brought it into the 2020s. For one thing, you have Dave saying the word mid, which definitely wasn't a thing back then.
Egbert blunders into a mid-ass weapon for the rest of his damn life.
Dave, you fuck, it's called the Strife Portfolio. That didn't stop being a thing or anything. But that's besides the point. So why keep it in 2009 if you're not going to be accurate to the time period? Why put on the charade? John, Rose, and Jade are alright though. Come to think of it, it's weird that they already have their names before they're properly introduced. If you remember from the comic, they're always referred to by their chum handles until we get through their introductions. Not that this is a bad change, mind you. It makes sense for a TV show pilot to actually use the proper names. I just remember all these stupid rules from the comic, so it's interesting to see a deviation from them. The reader still tries to name John Zeusmo Poopalord though. Or, well, that was actually the trolls. No, wait, it's Wayward Vagabond doing it here. What? Why? Why would Wayward Vagabond do that? No, I'm serious, why would he do that? Has he not read the etiquette book? Or eaten it? Some people have a problem with John's characterization, because a lot of the fandom interprets him as this derpy moron. He's actually a bit of a dick early on in the comic. I think he's fine. Rose and Jade are pretty much perfect. I don't know why Jade is wearing her normal shirt in her call with John though. She's supposed to be dreaming if it's anything like the comic.
And you guys say I'm spacey?
Wow, you think you're clever, don't you? Okay, last point. This pilot has a lot of Vivzy-pop writing. Which is to say, a ton of fuck words.
Fucking shit. Shit. Fucking shit. Shit. Fucking shit. Fucking shit. Fucking shit. Shit. Fuck. Shit. No, I'm not. Fuck.
I thought she wasn't involved! I know they're 13 years old, but can we tone this down just a little bit? So on to the positives. The text chats are replaced with voice calls, which is an obvious change. I like how cartoony the split screens are for the calls. It's a great use of the medium. In this one case, you can say that they adapted something pretty well. I also like the animation style in general. For something made with surely a budget of nothing, it looks pretty good. I attribute part of that to their use of varied line weights. I don't know why I was surprised by that, but a lot of modern cartoons will use this really thin, singular line weight. It makes everything look cheap. Actually, the only reason I care about this is because of that one art tutorial that Hussie made, showing how using varied line weights during inking makes your art look a whole lot better. So it makes sense that the Homestuck cartoon would follow the same philosophy if he cares about it that much. So yeah, that's about it for what I think of the pilot. I'd say there's potential here. I'll also say that my love of Homestuck is preventing me from being objective about its quality though. The comic is so ingrained into my mind that I can enjoy it without any explanations. But imagine if you're the Amazon executive that they're pitching this to. Someone who is unfamiliar with the story. This pilot fails at pretty much everything it sets out to do, which are simplifying things in a way that actually makes it coherent, appealing to a new audience, and encapsulating the gist of the story. I can't imagine anyone fresh looking at this pilot and being able to tell you what the series is going to be like. Consider this, John doesn't even load up the game. As far as anyone knows, it's about a kid on a quest to get the mail every day. That is partially what Act 1 is about, and I don't really blame them for having issues figuring out how to actually adapt this thing. Although I do remember the Avatar pilot being completely unrelated to the show's chronology. They just made what they thought would represent the standard episode. Perhaps they could have done something like that here. If this gets picked up, I sure hope they remake this episode. It needs to be expanded, which I know sounds pretty ironic since I was talking about cutting things down earlier. Well, it seems like their idea of cutting is just to leave events as they were, but never even introduce the basic concepts. Yeah, that's not what needs to be simplified. So if they expanded this episode to be 22 minutes and set things up, like Colonel Sassacre's daunting text, that would be great. In conclusion, I'd personally like to see more. Although if it doesn't get picked up, whatever. I enjoyed it, but it's not like I'm in love with the thing. It does seem like most people either don't care or outright hate the pilot. I think it's better than they're making out with themselves to be. Maybe my standards have just lowered over the course of the decade. I don't know. When you have the absolute dumpster fire that is Homestuck squared, anything is better. The pilot was at least okay. It's nothing to write home about, but it didn't make me want to actually jump off a cliff. I do fear its chances of anyone picking it up though, but good effort at least. We'll see what happens. Wow, would you look at them run down there? Dave is like Naruto or something. Or maybe Sonic? I don't know, would Dave run like an absolute weeaboo? I'm tired of this character assassination. Oh, well, maybe he's doing it ironically. Wow, Andrew Hussie's actually a genius.